Well, thanks, Jared. I want to make sure everybody can hear me well. Every time my parents would go to a meeting, they'd come home and they'd say, I couldn't hear a word that guy said up there. So I've always tried to make sure I'm loud enough everywhere I go. You know, I just shake my head, dear Jared, at your comments about us up there. We're just farmers, and we enjoy what we do. And I'm hoping to convey in 15, 20 minutes to you what we've been doing for 40 or 50 years. That's almost impossible. But I hope, if nothing else, I make you think and you can feel my passion about our purebred registered Holstein cow and how much we enjoy working and breeding and working with them. So
you got more like 45 minutes.
45 minutes. You don't want me up here that long.
Too much.
Well, I'd like to introduce my wife, Rebecca, first. Married 23 years, and we got a good team there. And my dad and mom, what all they meant to our operation years ago, and when she came on board, it took it to another level. Full-time at the farm, is interested in the cattle, the bloodlines, the breeding, the matings, the huge support to me and our whole operation. Now if I can figure out how to run this thing. I'm just going to introduce quickly a little bit about myself and our farm. We are in northeast Pennsylvania, and I am a farmer. I mean, a lot of times you go to meetings, you got salesmen talking to you. I'll give you a quick example. I checked the cow at midnight. A couple cows real close. Delivered her calf at 2:30. Raced up the house, took a quick shower, jumped in, and drove 340 miles to be here with you guys. So that's a long drive for a guy that walks to work. So, but this is our operation. This barn was built in 1971. We had two small tie stalls, 30 stall. My grandfather, my dad, and my grandfather and dad, they went out in the woods and they cut hardwood logs, oak, maple. It wasn't worth any more than hemlock at that time. That whole barn. Can you imagine what a barn that was back in 1971? And had a contractor build that barn, all hardwood. Ceilings are 12 feet high on the inside. If I had to build a tie stall barn today, I don't think I could build one much better. Dad had a lot of vision, a lot of windows, a lot of height. Of course, we didn't have tunnel ventilation back then, but we do now. And large stalls, 4.5 feet wide by 76 inches on one end, and they taper to the other end. The last half are 4 feet wide and about 68 inches long. So still today, even though our cattle have gotten bigger per se, we have no issues. And people say, Dean, how come you got big cows? Why would you want big cows? They're more trouble. And you know my answer is, our big cows aren't trouble. If you have the right bloodlines, who would want trouble with a big cow? Nobody would like big cows. Larger frame cattle give you more options. You can breed them earlier, calve them as younger 2-year-olds if you want. If you show, that's value added. We like the large frame. Everybody's got smaller cows, a lot of people. I want something a little different. The capabilities of being larger cattle if we so choose. And from there you can downsize them if you want with their matings and so forth. But I'll get into my breeding philosophy a little bit later about how we got into the Canadian bloodlines. Here's a couple shots from a long ways away. We have 900 acres up there. Now, that's not 900 acres like in Lancaster, okay? Land is cheaper up there. We've been very fortunate to gather neighboring farms over the years. The gas business came in a few years ago and took land out of sight. Probably our land buying days are pretty much over. A lot of that was accumulated years ago when land was $700 an acre or $1,000. It's not that way anymore. But we do have a lot of tillable acres. Give us options. We do sell hay. We're able to grow some soybeans down in our area, so it has brought us some diversity. This is our family. My niece got married this last summer. Rebecca, Courtney, Kyle, Clark, Katie, and myself. We can talk cows and farm all day long, but by far and away my most proudest and the most joy is that great group on the left. And my mom and dad on the right. We lost my dad last December. Worked side by side for 40-some years with him. And sometimes you don't realize how special a person really is until they're gone. We knew it. We knew it at the time, but I didn't realize how big of an impact. And I was a lucky one to work side by side since I was a kid. And I bucked his trends when I was younger, like all 20-year-old guys do. Thought he was doing things wrong, wanted to try different things. We hacked out our differences. And we remained a team, or I wouldn't be standing in front of you now. And now, come full course, he was right on the money. Yeah, the most incredible breeder that I've ever known or heard of, in my opinion. And I just hope that as we go forward, we can continue on doing what he started, and I got a chance to work with, he would be so proud now of our herd and the direction we're headed, and I don't plan on wavering from that. Okay, I want to get into two different cow families, the L and the J cow families. And we're going to look at the bulls first, so then we'll look at the maternal line. This is a Linjet son out of the Fever Lassie cow. 4-year-old cow, last year that went 94. This is a young picture, a professional picture. I don't like the professional pictures. You know, I could talk a long time about that in our industry and how pictures are doctored and so forth. That's not me. And even though we show some, I'm not a show boy. Believe me, I'm not a show boy. The fixing that goes on and all that just grates me to no end. But my kids enjoy it. We've showed in 4-H. We like showing, honestly. And if we get beat, it doesn't matter. To me, we go to the shows. We have a string of cattle in a line. People come through. We talk breeding, bloodlines, excuse me, and cattle. That's showing to me. It gets my cattle out in front of some people, and we can talk. What happens in that show ring? I could care less. It's out of my control. And everything the Mount Glen does is going to be completely honest. And if a cat, we got a lot of animals in our herd that are born the last week of August, last week of November, and the last week of February. And I'm proud of that. There's people that move dates, and you've heard this before, and I can't accuse anybody of anything, you know, but you hear about it. What kind of message are we sending our kid if we change a date on a calf one day? You're giving your kids a license that you can go lie about anything. It just grates me to no end. So yes, we bred some All-American cows, calves, and all that. But that's not our goal by no means. My goal is not to breed the next All-American cow. By no means, that's not my goal. My goal is to maintain what we do and create a profitable operation that my kids want to be a part of. And right now it looks like that's what's happening. But anyway, this Fever Lassie cow, we know about the Linjet bull. I mean, though the breeders out there, I don't know how many times I've talked to breeders, you know, middle-aged or older gentlemen, and they talk about or read in an article about a Linjet that was one of their best cows. And he's an iconic bull that had a minus milk of 2,000 to 3,000 pounds. I mean, again, all the numbers that was showed up there before, I mean, they're just numbers and they mean zero to me. But we made that mating for a bull. That's what we did. This is his mother. Why did we use Fever on the Dundee Lovely cow? Well, I remember hacking through that. This was back, you know, quite a few years ago. We wanted to use a Goldwyn son. I was not a fan of Goldwyn himself. That's not our kind of cow or anything. But I was looking for a Goldwyn son with a good maternal line that was doing some good things up in Canada because of Canadian influence in their cattle with the strength and width. It's kind of what we have. And Fever was the bull at that time that come to the top. And David Crack, who has now passed away, that bred the Fever bull, Ed Smith told me he was a respected gentleman. He was an honest, respected, hard-working gentleman. That meant something to me. That's one of the reasons we use Fever. And we flushed the Dundee Lovely cow to Fever. And we got that Lassie. And we got 2 others at home out of that flush. We got 5 altogether. 3 Fever daughters She's 94. The other two are excellent. 90 with more points than them yet. All big records, high butter fat. And then we got two sons that weren't really marketable because they were fever sons. We didn't figure we could move enough semen on. And Jared Burley, we sold one of them downstate. One day he called me. He's a nutritionist in that area, down below Williamsport. He says, Dean, have you seen that fever son out of Lovely? And I said, no. He said, I saw him at this gentleman's farm. And he said, I have him scored 93 points and with a foot trimming and a clipping, and he could probably be a committee bull someday. And I remember those two fever sons that I sold to dairymen because how many bulls can I keep at home? You know, I don't have the facilities. And they both turned out so well. And the point I'm making is, if you can find a bloodline that transmits consistently, no matter what bull is used, that is a powerful thing. That is very powerful. And in our opinion, this cow right here is that in our herd. If I was smart, now you're going to hear me talk about smarts versus wisdom. If I was a smart guy and I'm looking money as my driver, I would retire this cow and I would send her somewhere and just make all the babies I can make out of her by a variety of bulls. We may flush her more in the future, but boy, I like coming in the barn and milking that cow every morning. You know, and so that's where we're at. And she's pushing 8 years old now. But we've used a variety of bulls. Most all of them have turned out really good. And she's the cow we've identified. Not only herself as an individual, her temperament, her disposition, her pedigree. And that's why we've made matings to get bulls out of this cow and her daughters. Okay, this is her daughter, Lassie. Now this is the Lynch bull that's at Triple-Hil. A mating, a flush that was done for both bulls and heifers. Tried Adolf. Same AAA numbers that Lovely calls for. It was at Triple-Hil's suggestion, actually, we used that bull. And we got 3 at home, or 3 out of that flush. This guy, this bull, Locke, we have at home. We're using him at home. A tremendous individual. And then a heifer that just calved at home, an Adolf, tried Adolf. There was only 3 we got, those 2 bulls, and this heifer at home that is just fantastic. I mean, I have all the potential in the world. So we're looking for, that's what we're looking for, consistency on every single one of them, being way above and beyond the average. A consistent, powerful breeding influence, and that's what this cow is. Now here's a little bit of her pedigree, and I don't have pictures. This is the Dundee Lovely you just saw. That's her dam at the top. We don't have her anymore. She's 91 points. That's her biggest record. That's her lifetime. And believe me, we're not a herd that pushes for high production. By no means. Herd average, I can't even hardly tell you what it is. It's not our goal. Our goal is to be expert cow care people that make cattle last for a long time and be a breeding establishment. That's it. That's all I don't get caught up in any kind of number, herd average. We got cows outside that aren't due for months. You know, the numbers, I'm not a numbers guy. I mean, if you want a numbers guy, I'm not the guy. And then Leader Lucky is the next dam back. She was at Carousel. And now this cow I'm going to talk about here a little bit. This is the one that started this L family. A cow that kind of put us on the map, per se. Her mother was a Glen delegate. Old Canadian bull, powerful, big cattle. Maybe could be a little wetter, as they would say. That cow was very good. Massive frame, width, length. She made a record of 41,000 for us, way back in the 70s. And we didn't have any trouble getting milk out of that cow. We bred her to broker and got this cow. And I just want to tell a little bit of the story about this cow and how the cow business can be ironic and incredible sometimes. This is one of those things that happened that you couldn't, excuse me, you could make a movie out of. We got her as a calf. She was born in September, and we showed at our local Troy Fair. Now that's a powerful county show. Some of the national judges that have judged there said you won't find a better county show anywhere. And we're very proud of that in our county. She took first place as a fall calf. I hope I can keep you with me here through this story, because it's really good. And was reserve junior champion. The judge that day was Triple-Hil. Probably some of you have heard of him before. Well, took her home. I think she got, then we went to 2 different district shows. She got beat at both of them. I mean, she was second, third, fourth, doesn't matter. We bred her, and we put her outside for the winter. We didn't have that heifer barn at the time. So she's a bred heifer outside with another 40 heifers in the mud up on the hillside. We don't have that sandy soil you folks do here. They're where they eat is in the mud. And the next spring, she's a bred heifer. Triple-Hil shows up, and he wants to buy her, or wants to take her and put her in the show sale down in Maryland. He remembered her. And we're like, you know, we didn't think we had anything special. We didn't think about it. No, we want to keep her and develop her and see what happens. A little while later, him and Mike Heath show up, and they want to buy her. And so we're like, you know, all right, we put a price on her, a really good price for what we thought we had at the time, but, and they took her. They took her home, they clipped her up, they sent a video out to Illinois to Butler and Buckley and those guys, and they more than doubled their money within a few weeks. And that's great. You know, and we're doing our work at home. We're farmers, we're breeders. We're not following the show circuit. And then all of a sudden we start to hear some things. And she won the Illinois State Show. Well, that's good. Great, we're happy for her. And now I'm going to stop the story right now. And I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm going to tell you something that happened. In March of that year, before we sold her, our Bradford County Holstein Club went on a tour up to Canada. And we went to the Ontario Discovery Spring Show in Ontario. Powerful show, you can imagine. And I was following, looking in the world, you know, there's this heifer that stood out to me the year before. Like I said, I don't follow the show cattle a lot, but I did this one for some reason. She was a Starbuck daughter. Starbuck was past his heyday. For May, Starbuck Renee was her name. She was a fall calf the year before, and she was unanimous All-American, All-Canadian, never lost a show all year. And she was a Starbuck daughter. And that's why it stood out to me, because probably the only Starbuck daughter that was at the top at that time. His heyday was already gone. And so I followed her, just kept my eye on that heifer the year before, and then I'm up there at that Ontario Spring Show. I didn't even think about who was there. And we're standing there right along the ring, me and my buddies, and here come this fall yearling around the ring for May Starbuck Renee. I mean, just unbelievable yearling. Well, she's junior champion that day. You know, just, I thought, holy smokes, that's that heifer that I noticed the year before in the world. And that was it. We went home. Okay, we went home. Did our work. Now, she's out there in Illinois, won that show. She's a fall yearling. I think you know where I'm headed. Anyway, Madison's coming up that year. Well, they take her to Madison. Holy smokes, she must have really developed since she left our place. And they have her at Madison. So we thought, we ought to go out and see her. We ought to go out to Madison and see her shown. You know, so we get our chores done, we line up our help, and we're on our way to Madison, my wife and I. And we get out there and we walk in the tent where she is, housed with Triple-Hil and his entourage of people. And what's the first words out of Triple-Hil's mouth? I think we can beat Renee. Now, how ironic is that? You know, that this heifer I'd been following is all of a sudden, he says, and I'm like, come on, are you crazy? You know, if we're in the top half, I'd be happy. See, I didn't know what I had. I hadn't seen her develop. And lo and behold, we're watching the Madison fall yearling class. And all of a sudden, they sort 2 heifers to the top, Renee and Lucy. Renee's first and Lucy's second. And at the last second, he switched them. You don't think I got goosebumps talking about it right now? I mean, think about it. What if I was, when I was standing along the ring in March in Ontario and watching Renee walk by, if somebody would have tapped me on the shoulder and said, Dean, you have a heifer in the mud at home that's going to beat her in Madison this year. Isn't that a heck of a story? I mean, it's just unbelievable. I'll never have one in my life that'll top it. And she did. She won that day at Madison. She got sold up in Canada. Eckstein's had her. Bob Fitzsimmons was working for Carousel at the time. He was up in Canada. This is the way I heard the story. He wasn't there to look at Lucy, but he was in the area and he knew she was there, so he went into Eckstein's to buy her, or to see her. And he called back to Carousel, to Harold Bader, and he said, we got to have this Lucy cow. They already had Rosie. She was bred 10 miles from where we live. And lo and behold, they made the arrangement and they bought her. And as a 3-year-old, she was, what have I been doing, hitting the button here? She ended up winning and was intermediate champion at Madison. My dad was there, and he had some age on him at this point. Mom and Dad went out to see her showing. And on his birthday, she was intermediate champion. Nuts. And so anyway, then Carousel had a dispersal coming up a few years later. In the meantime, we'd been out to see her. They had her in their first box stall in their new facility where their flush cows were. She was in their very first Carousel. And they did Holstein International did an article when their upcoming sale was at Carousel. And Bob Fitzsimmons made a comment in there, maybe the nicest compliment we ever got. He said, of all the great cows we've had at Carousel, and he named them off, Broker Mandy, Renita Ranger, Bugs Black Star Buffy. He says the greatest brood cow of them all was Lucy. And Dad went out to the sale. Him and Dick Mellinger went out to the sale. And he brought back some embryos. He brought back that cow right there, the daughter of Lucy, and a Gibson heifer that ended up being an excellent cow for us. And he went out there and brought them back. And from that purchase, going to Carousel and bringing back that cow family, we have all these other animals down these bulls. So that's a little bit about how Dad chased out there after that genetics because we believed in it, because we knew how powerful it was. And then we get this cow home, and this cow here, and she's already bred to Talent. Bob Fitzsimmons made that mating, and we got this Talent Lynn cow. I bred her to Dundee and got Lovely, and it just keeps going. It's a powerful thing, and my job is to capitalize on it and make matings for bulls. And would I like to have the whole herd go back to that one cow? Yeah, that'd be neat. That'd be something different, but that's probably not realistic. I know a herd that did that one time, and it kind of put him on the map because it was so unique. Now that's the L family, and this is the J family. This bull was decades in the making, decades. He stands for everything Mount Glen stands for. Out of a great cow family all the way back to another cow that was nominated All-American for us, a Bride and Astrojet, back in 1989. She's the one that started it. Well, before that was Agro Acres Unique, which was a big, framey, powerful bunch of cattle out of Canada, these Agro Acres Unique. Could have been more wet, no doubt about it. But Dad, he went to the bloodlines. He went to the strength and power because up in northern Pennsylvania at that time, there was cattle dealers bringing down those Canadian genetics. I mean, they were unique at that time, not anymore. And those cattle dealers would bring them down right in Troy, 10 miles from us. Scott Brothers, load after load. They'd go up there and handpick cattle. They'd bring them down. They'd put them in their barn. They'd have an open house on a Friday night, come in. They'd have them priced like a tag sale. Whatever ones they didn't sell, they milked, and then they'd go get another load. That happened in several different areas in northern Pennsylvania. Northern Pennsylvania had that Canadian influence above and beyond anybody else, even southern Pennsylvania. And that's what Dad liked. He started out with a few grades in the 50s, but he liked that size and strength, depth of heel, able to graze, able to walk on rocks, durability, heart, all those things that you can't put a number on. The ability to overcome problems. You get a hot E. coli quarter, is the cow going to die or is she a fighter? But yet cattle still able to work with, and not, good dispositions. And we have not wavered from that since the 50s. And but this bull, here's a couple shots of him out in our lot right there. I've said before, I took these pictures, and I'm very amateur. But that picture right there, if I was smarter, I would not have had that fence post in there. I don't want people saying Jonah's the bull with a fence post leg. But he is a tremendous individual. And the thing about these two bloodlines for me is, I can go to any sire book and look at hundreds and hundreds of bulls. And when I pull this bull out of the tank, or Lynch, or Lincoln, I know what I'm going to get. I mean, Dad always said, he said, dream it and envision it. Dream it and envision it. And I tell my kids that. I mean, Clark, he's in sports. And, you know, real good athlete. First basketball games tonight. And I told him before, I said, envision and dream of having a real good night where that ball goes through that hoop every time. You got to dream it and envision it. You know, that's just part of it, but that's part of the recipe. And this Jonah bull, right out of the gate, we started using him heavy. I mean, just everywhere I could, random, just breeding the heifers and everything. And I knew they were going to, I just, in my mind and my heart, I knew what we were going to get. There's a couple more pictures. This is picture day when this guy right here, by the way, we do have him secured there or something else besides just me. Jeff's holding his rope right there, and there's a hay wagon right here. So, but I remember that day. We got, these are all neighbors and friends, and neighbors and friends make the camaraderie of the Holstein business much more enjoyable than being out on an island. And I went down the other end of that heifer barn with that hay wagon. We brought him, I had him double tied, brought him around, tied him to the, got up in the wagon, tied him to the wagon, and I was leading him up through the heifer barn, and these guys were out on the lawn, and he was bellowing like crazy. I mean, just got him out there, everything was new. I'd had him on the hay wagon before, but he was bellowing and walking good, not fighting, but just bellowing. And those guys were up on the lawn, and their faces were half white, wondering what the heck they got themselves into when I called them for help. But when we got him up in the lawn, and we got him out there on those, we straddled the blocks and pulled in, we got our hands on him, and he just melted. And he just stood right there and never hardly moved again the rest of the day. And a matter of fact, we couldn't even, we had all we could do to get his head that high. I mean, he wouldn't go like this, you know, we wanted him to, you know, like this. And he was just holding it up like this. And it about killed us to get his head up that high, but he was so relaxed and calm. But it was, that's a big day to picture a bull like that. A little bit about Jonah's Dam. These pictures, we just happened to have them. We never took a lot of pictures. We were nose to the grindstone, but we did take a few of these, that maternal line, when they were young cows. We never got a picture of the outside, Janice. A very dairy cow. Tried Adolph was a very good mating for her. That's why we used him. Those 624 numbers. This is the Grand Dam, Joyce. 93 points. We showed her for years, but she wasn't a show cow. She was wide, balanced, had some cover. She was a smoothie, I call her. A great cow. But she wasn't that show cow. You know, she wasn't that razor